suffering for my brother's bad judgment.
So here's a story from when I was 19. The funny thing is, it doesn't really stick in my memory as a scary moment until I stay in a caravan. Then, when the lights start going off, it usually comes flooding back. So, for a bit of context, my older brother, as dearly as I love him, is a bit of a dipstick. He's one of those people who goes through life on instinct, but the snag of his instincts are generally terrible, and it gets him into lots of scrapes. Every so often, one of those scrapes ends up involving me. One thing he kicks ass at is driving. Our dad's a mechanic, so since my brother was a preteen, he's been fixing up and racing a certain model of car. Well, the racing didn't start till he was a teen, but still. He's never made much money from it, but as long as he's kept in fags, weed, and booze, he's a happy bunny. Historically, I've never gotten on with his girlfriends. This is in part down to the difficulties I've had befriending other girls throughout the earlier part in my life, but mostly because my bro has a knack for picking up complete head the balls. So when we're chatting buzzed one night and he told me he thought his new girlfriend Chantel was the one, I decided to drag myself back up north to meet the poor unfortunate. I can be pretty judgmental, and when I met Chantel, I formed a snap judgment that she was no different to his usual fare of crazy. She had the look he goes for, permatanned, platinum blonde girl with huge jugs crammed into a tracky top. Her nails, you can tell a lot about a girl from her nails, were cherry red witchy things, bolted on with glue and far too long to allow you to do anything practical. As I entered our living room and saw her, she was pecking away at the screen of her smartphone like a bird, trying to text. She barely acknowledged me as my brother introduced us, and I think the look I gave him said it all, because before long he was nervously chattering away about anything and everything he imagined we had in common. I made all the effort I could after a 4-hour drive, but she and I could barely hold a 2-sentence conversation together. When my dad called me into the other room, Storage Hunters was on, and offered me a beer, I all but sprinted out the door. "What do you think of Chantel?" he asked, casting me the sidelong glance he uses when he expects me to go off on one. I belched at him and left it at that, not really knowing where to begin. "You know your brother is pretty taken with her," he says. At this point I pull what my family call Sam's iguana look, where I continue to face the TV, but look at my dad to my side. "What do you want, Dad?" "Well, you could go with him to his race this weekend." I pretty much spat my drink out at that, since his race was in Scotland, and I'd just finished my long-ass drive. Come on, it means so much to him. Nan didn't take to her, and you know what he thinks about your ma's opinion. Admittedly, this should have been a red flag. My Nan is like a bullshit-seeking missile, and she's old enough that she doesn't give a fuck. Just picture Olenna Tyrell from Game of Thrones, but Irish and constantly carrying a pack of 20 Regal in her bra. But I'm sentimental sometimes, and my big bro is such a massive fanny that my opinion probably is quite important to him. My dad senses my hesitation and presses home the advantage until I'm cramming my luggage back into my car, along with my brother's gear and Chantel's Barbie pink suitcase, which I'm pretty sure is big enough to serve as a viable alternative to the Soyuz capsule. While I probably shouldn't get further off topic, I'd like to point out that it later emerged the reason my dad wanted me to go so badly was because he had a lady friend coming round and didn't want to get his end away. Anyway, we take the trip up. My bro leads the way while I follow in my battered old Golf, making painfully awkward small talk with Chantel in the passenger seat as she pecks away at her phone. The first 2 hours are unadulterated hell, but eventually we start to talk a little more. And when I mention that I'd recently been dumped by my boyfriend, she actually switches off the screen and consoles me. She makes me feel better by putting some music on, and we bond over a shared love of the McFly busted oeuvre. By the time we get to my brother's friend's place in Scotland, we're getting on really well. The place we're staying in is one of those fixed caravan sites. I believe they're called trailer parks in the US. It's a little dingy, especially since holiday season is mostly over and people are leaving ahead of the site closing for the winter, but at the same time, the setting is beautiful. We get set up inside. Bro and Chantel will get the bed. I will get to hear them knobbing from the converted sofa, and since light is fading and Chantel is complaining about not having 3G, my brother decides to take her to poker night at the local pub. I stick around the caravan because I knew I'd get separated from the others and probably cornered for some awkward conversation with a pervy old man if I went. They haven't been gone for much more than an hour when Chantel starts texting me. The penny drops at this point that this is her thing. I don't know if it's FOMO or just generally being bored with her surroundings, but I figured that at any one time she's probably texting 4 or 5 people. I don't mind. There's fuck all on TV, and with just my music playing in the darkness, give me a break, I was being emo. My thoughts keep drifting back to my boyfriend, so I'm feeling sorry for myself. Her texting style irritates me a little. She keeps using text speak, but sending really long messages, and 'cause the signal's patchy, they keep coming through either incomplete or in the wrong order, leaving me to piece together what she's talking about like I'm in Memento or something. She also does this weird cross-eyed, tongue-out emoticon at least twice per message. After a while, she talks about how the game's getting good and stops sending messages. Right as I'm drifting off to sleep, I get a call from an unknown number. I decline it out of hand. I've had the same number since I was 15 and made some very poor choices with which companies I gave it out to. Then, almost immediately, the same number dials again. At this point, I get pissed off. The boyfriend who ditched me has developed a habit of getting drunk and then calling me looking for an easy shag. I decline the call again and ignore the voicemail. A short while later, I'm jerked out of sleep by Chantel. She's texting again, asking if I'm still awake, and if my bro left the keys to his car in the caravan because he can't find them. I say yes and ask how the poker tournament went. She says, "Very well. Which caravan is it again?" At this point, I'm rolling my eyes, presuming they are rat-assed. "The one with the model of my brother's car outside, you daft bent," I reply. Over the music from my earphones, I hear a noise. It sounded like a man's laugh, but not my brother's. I'm pretty sure that's what I heard, but it's isolated as fuck out in this campsite, and my heart's starting to race, so I stand up and go to the door. I can see fuck all through the peephole, like it's literally black. There's just no light pollution out here, but as I pull the earphones out, I can hear someone crunching around in the gravel. I damn near shat myself when my phone vibrated in my hand. Another text from Chantel. Let me in. For some reason, this was the point where my standard alone in the dark scaredy catness turned into full-blown fear. I think it was because the footsteps I could hear were way too heavy and were trying to be way too quiet. My brother's quite light-footed, but a loud drunk, and I just know I'd have heard him and Chantel coming from a mile off. Or my bro would have impersonated a werewolf or something that would have utterly failed to put the shits up on me. He's also like a fucking homing pigeon, and there's no way he'd have needed telling which caravan it was. I looked down at Chantel's last few texts and saw the difference in style. Shorter, capitalized, no annoying derp smile. I stood frozen in the darkness. I've no idea for how long. I figured that they were after the car, hence asking about the keys. My mind then ran through a detailed CSI-style post-mortem of them finding my body, riddled in stab wounds and bukkakied to death. I was wondering if it was just theft I had to worry about when my stream of thought was interrupted by a series of bangs and a snapping noise like a whip crack. Suddenly, I can see light through the peephole. I'm in full flight or fight mode now, so it takes me a while to lean forward and look through it again. The security light of the caravan opposite is on, but the door beneath is warped and bent from being forced open. I can see one of them rooting around inside while the other stands by my brother's car. Then came the words, "The girl's not here." As usual with me, flight won over fight. Pretty much as soon as I heard that, I went into the bathroom on the far side of the caravan and pushed the window open. I was sure they'd hear the noise I made getting out. First, my shoes squeaking against the fiberglass. I think that's what caravans are made of. Then the crunch as I landed in the gravel. But I didn't stick around to figure that out. I bolted into the raised woodland behind the caravan. Not far, but far enough that I had to feel blindly ahead of myself in case I walked into a tree. Once I was completely disorientated, I waited. I waited there for a long time until I heard the first crash of another door being broken, and no more than a minute later, the sound of screeching tires. I never came out until I heard my brother calling for me. Even then, I waited until I could see they were alone. I damn near throttled him when Chantel told me he'd been bragging all night about how he was going to use his poker winnings to buy new brakes for the car he raced. Being the doting older brother, he was absolutely livid that I'd stood by while his car had been pinched and not taken his keys with me for a jolly little game of cat and mouse with some criminals in the woods. I've no idea how I got mentioned at this poker night, but I'm very glad my brother's now wife texts like a child on morphine, and that my scumbag ex dumped me so I could mope in the dark. Wish I could say this is the first and last time that my brother nearly got me killed, but it's not. More to follow one day, if I can be asked. Thanks for reading.